July 13th, there was an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, and that has really set in motion lots of moving parts here in Washington, D.C. And today was probably the first of what won't be the last by the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheatle, who was in the hot seat today. And as our guests today, Tony Shaffer and Matthew Ho, are going to point out here, this was a bipartisan issue. This was not one of the normally partisan things that might fall one way or the other. But there's a lot of people asking a lot of tough questions of Director Cheatle. Fellas, welcome to the show.
Good to be here again. Thanks for having me, Danny, and good to see you again, Matt.
Yeah, good to be here with both of y'all. Thank you.
Listen, I'm so grateful that you guys were both able to make time to come on, because I know your time is very valuable these days, because lots of people want to have your advice on these things. And we're on here the first day it happened. And we said, we can't wait to come back on and we can get some answers to some of the big questions that we wanted answers, her to respond to. And as it's turned out, lots of the questions were asked. Not a lot of the answers were forthcoming. Tony, I wonder what your impression was from what you've seen, just kind of overall.
Well, I start with the end. My friend Mike Walsh did a good job, I think, of wrapping things up at the end. He was pointing out some of the real disparities regarding just basic questions, interrogatories that we're not answered. And he basically said, look, you've done nothing today to actually clarify anything, and you've probably done some damage, because this has done nothing to assuage any rumors or conspiracy theories. I think it made it worse. I think the other thing, which I want to give a shout out to both sides. I was amazed at the bipartisanship. I only have one criticism, and by the way, just in case, hold on. If any of you guys see my AR sneaking up on me, trying to attack me, make sure you tell me, because I'm going to put it right behind me. Because they were trying to say the AR did it. No, that was the only thing I had a problem with. Other than that, they were completely bipartisan. And just keep watching out in case it tries to attack me, because they said ARs are bad. But just saying. But otherwise, AOC, I got to say, I was blown away by her question. From it, I think nobody expected it, especially Cheatle. And she basically said this, and I'll paraphrase as best I can. She correctly identified AOC, Congresswoman AOC, Ocasio-Cortez. I have great respect for the way she did this. It's like, isn't the AR the most common sports rifle in America? Yes. Isn't the typical range between 400 to 500 meters? Yes. Well, then why did you not then recognize that having a spot within 150 meters of the president is something you should be concerned about? It was like, I think, Cheatle was literally didn't know what to say, because I think she expected some sort of a soft...
How did she answer? How did Cheatle answer that question?
She basically said the same thing she always says. Well, I really can't talk about the specifics of the evaluation. I can't give you details of the team who did the evaluation. It only added to, I think, the fury of both sides, to include, Congressman, is it Roacon?
Rokana.
Rokana. Yeah. Boy, he was brilliant. I mean, these guys were just laying it down, and Cheatle was horrible. So that's kind of my summation. But again, we didn't really get any answers. So I guess we have a lot of brain to cover today to kind of go through what she didn't say.
Yeah, unfortunately. And Matt, what did you think, or what did you hope to hear today, and how did you feel at the end of the day, or whether it was met?
I didn't hope to see what we saw. That's for sure. I mean, it was, as Tony was saying, just a lot of questions offered, a lot of good questions offered, bipartisan in nature, bipartisan calls for her to resign, because Rokana called for her to resign, and I believe there's been other Democrats who have as well. But essentially, you have the director of Secret Service getting up there, not answering questions, saying she doesn't know, and then falling back upon the excuse. I think this is where she most hurt herself, was by continually saying things like, it's only been 9 days. I don't know why we didn't have anyone up on that roof, but we have to remember, it's only been 9 days since the shooting. I mean, she said that, if she said it once, she said it 6 dozen times. It was just this type of coming in unprepared, as they did. These are people who go through hearings all their life, all their political life. Once they reach a certain point where they're SES, senior executive service, this becomes a part of the job. And she acted as she had never been in one of these things. She was completely unprepared. She seemed off guard. I would have expected, I was hoping that she was going to have a presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is to have a map up there, right?
Exactly.
This is the fairgrounds. Here's the timeline as we know it as of today. And you can caveat that all you want with, okay, this is as we know it today. None of that. Absolutely none of that. In that very first section of questions from James Comer, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, just essentially she refused to answer anything. And then Jamie Raskin, the Democratic, ranking member on that committee, I felt, he asked some very serious questions, but I felt like he was giving her an opportunity to get herself out of trouble, and she refused to do so. And it proceeds until you get to Jerry Connolly, Democrat from Fairfax, Virginia, who essentially says that to her. He more or less says to her, I'm trying to get you out of trouble here. Please help me help you. And she refused. She refused to answer questions.
Okay. So for any of those who may not have seen, we're about to get to quite a few clips here where people can see exactly for themselves what had happened. But because Gary is Johnny on the spot, he actually was able to real quick bring up the AOC clip. So I appreciate that. I'd like to see it myself. Gary, roll the tape.
Act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advanced
What an answer.
The determination of the perimeter. I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
And so what I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
A perimeter was established, and even though there were buildings that were outside of that perimeter, it wasn't just that building. There were a number of buildings in the area, and there was overwatch that was created to help mitigate some of those buildings.
So basically, I'm not going to answer the question, even though it's self-evident what the right answer is that wasn't done. She's just going to word salad it. I think she's pretty good at that.
That was for people who didn't watch it. That's it. That's the entire hearing. Unless you're a masochist, don't watch it. I mean, this is one of the, hey guys, I feel like we're doing a public service here. We're like, we watched it so you don't have to, kind of thing. Like we put ourselves through this. So I mean, so folks who are out there, that's essentially what it was, though, was that type of answer for questions that there should have been an answer for, answers, readily available. And if there are no answers, well, where is the accountability? What's being done about it? That wasn't there either. Another point, Representative Ocasio-Cortez gets very upset with the director because Director Cheatle is saying, well, we'll have answers in 60 days. And Representative Ocasio-Cortez says that's completely unsatisfactory. I mean, that's not, So,
but there's something else I want to point out here, and I'm going to get into the clips now here, because she may have said that on a lot of stuff, but there's other things that she said which were factually inaccurate. And I think she's not telling some things that aren't true. And so that's one of the main things I want to get with you guys. Let's go to the first one here, right off the top of the bat, to where sort of like AOC asked there, one of the other representatives was saying, hey, this is within 150 meters. What gives?
It's been 9 days, Madam Director. Did they notice a rooftop 150 yards away that was a potential threat? Yes or no?
I am certain that the rooftop was noticed. I am pulling the reports.
What was the security parameters around securing that rooftop? What did they do?
There was overwatch provided for that rooftop.
Did overwatch fail?
I am waiting to hear what the results of the investigation were so that I can identify where the failure was.
Okay, so this is the first point where, okay, you say, yes, overwatch was provided. Past tense, claims, a statement. Then he's like, okay, it's been 9 days. So it wasn't provided. Well, I don't know yet. So either it was or it wasn't, or you know or you don't know. But that answer doesn't work. Tony, what do you think?
Well, let's be honest here. We've all been in her shoes in some aspect, all three of us. We've had to go through and do a rapid assessment and an investigation to pull together the basic interrogatories. Anytime I've had to do something like this, I have the basic facts, a baseline of the basic facts within 48 hours. She's had 9 days. So she could have had and should have had a preliminary report ready within I'll be generous, 5 days. We're at 9 right now, 5 days. And that information that she's saying she doesn't have, she has it. She's lying. She's flat out lying, because that information was amalgamated rapidly by the on-site team. The FBI has a copy of it. And I'm not asking the FBI to dime her out. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that within the context of this circumstance, within the team she has, professionals at the GS 14, 15 SES level, they've all pulled it together. It's all there. This is a political decision to not share it. And I think both sides, Matt, picked up on the politics here of just stonewalling and sandbagging, not wanting to talk about things which everybody knows this information is available.
Other than because you don't want the information to come out, Matt, why would you not give basic information like that when you have it?
It's hard to understand, Danny. It really is. I mean, except you're trying to cover something up, except you're trying to protect something. And whether it's her own career, she refuses to resign. It was brought up. I think it was Ro Khanna who brought it up that when this happened in 1981, the Secret Service director at the time resigned. And she didn't know that. She didn't know that. But, you know, you look at this and you just say, my God, what is happening here? Because this, the Secret Service, of course, does protection. That's what we know it most well for. But it also does investigations. I mean, half of its job is protection, and the other half is essentially financial investigations, financial crimes, cyber crimes, those types of things. It used to be housed in the Treasury Department for that reason. These are the people who would track down counterfeiters. So the idea that the Secret Service can't do investigations within 9 days to come up with, as Tony was saying, some type of outline that their directors could then go forward to the Congress of the United States and say, here's what happened when the former president and the Republican nominee, or at that point, likely Republican nominee for president, was almost killed. If not for him turning his head, if not for that kid on the roof getting surprised by those two cops trying to climb up, whatever it was, the roof being so hot he couldn't concentrate, whatever it was, if not for those things, Donald Trump will be dead. And 9 days in, you don't have this. So it is. You have to, and even if it is just strict incompetence, even if it is a fact that this person in charge of the Secret Service, you shouldn't be in charge of putting together cardboard boxes, right? Even if that's who this person is, you know, this idea that 9 days in, and not having these answers, all that leads to is just the understanding that there's something deeper and more sinister and nefarious going on here. And it could, I'm an Occam's razor guy. I think the simplest answer is the most likely answer. And in this case, I think it's because she's incompetent, and incompetence rolls downhill. Federal agencies are completely corrupt and broken. You know, again, we talked about this last week, how this, you know, perfect timing that they break up the pier. They finally give up on the pier off of Gaza, right as this is occurring, failing to protect the president of the United States, the former president of the United States. Yeah. So that's my opinion on it. But I certainly understand why people would look into this and say something doesn't make sense, because it doesn't make sense. Just the fact that they can't answer simple questions shows that maybe there's something going on.
And now then let's get to some more complicated questions, because now then we get into, Tony, I want you to talk about this next one here. Sure. This is Representative Boebert here, who's asking some really important questions on timing, when somebody was discovered and what actions took place after that. Watch this one.
You've confirmed that the assassin was identified as suspicious 57 minutes prior to the shooting. Was the suspicious individual ever approached by an agent? Was any contact ever made with him?
Not to my knowledge.
Is that
to my knowledge, that individual was not located by an agent.
Okay, so what if you had 57 minutes, I'm sorry, before the event started, before Trump came out there, if you have a suspicion, now tell me, you've done some of these before. If you hear there's a suspicious incident, now I know there could be a lot of suspicious people, but are you going to go, oh, okay, I guess we're not going to take any action? What should they have done?
Well, you engage. I mean, you just go up and talk to them. This is something the Israelis do as a routine regarding air traffic, airport security for El Al. They actually go up and talk to people. As a matter of fact, DHS was doing it for a while. I actually encountered one of the folks doing it at TSA. I thought it was brilliant. It's like she was, one of the guards was just kind of walking through, talking to folks in line. And she was engaging. She was looking for alerting behavior. And I'm sorry, Danny, this guy had alerting behavior oozing out of his pores, for God's sake, And also in this testimony, she talked about, I don't think it was Bobert, but someone else brought up the whole rangefinder thing we talked about last time. Oh, that was okay? Well, it technically wasn't dangerous. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is dangerous when you consider what's at stake here. So the fact that you have this level of detachment, I'm being kind, detachment from the reality which these people have to manage, it says a lot. And I think this only stoked the fire on both sides of the aisle to double and triple down on going after Cheatle on this stuff, because it doesn't pass the common sense test.
Yeah, here's another one that doesn't pass the common sense test. Matt, I wonder if you can talk about this one's coming up, also by Representative Bobert here. This gets to one of the questions that a lot of people have asked, because apparently, by some reports, the southern of the two counter sniper teams had the shooter in his sights. And by some of the video you can see from some of the other angles, it appears that they're actually looking at him. But then the question is, why didn't he engage? So that question was asked. Here's how she responded.
Do you continue to assert the slope of the roof as a credible reason for leaving this position undefended?
First, I'll go back and correct that there was no order to hold fire. Our agents and officers have the ability to neutralize a threat at the time
so you
that
don't
they
know,
see it.
I'm sorry, you don't know the communication that was taking place or how long he had him in his sights, because you haven't spoke to him, but you do know that there was no order to hold fire.
I can tell you the way that our personnel are trained. They are trained on the use of force scale, that when they see a threat, they are authorized to neutralize that threat. They don't have to ask for permission.
You excuse the roof being unmanned because of the slope. Do you stand by that assertion?
The roof was not covered with an individual on it because there was overwatch provided.
Apparently not. No, there was no overwatch provided. This is very evident. President Trump was shot. A man died.
So, Matt, first of all, I don't know why you would say, no, we didn't have anybody on that, after she had already on camera said previously, oh, we didn't have anybody up there because the slope was too high. We didn't want to hurt anybody. Now she's saying, well, actually, we didn't because there's overwatch. Only there wasn't any overwatch. So I want you, first of all, to talk about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, what needs to happen here is obvious, is that there needs to be an independent prosecutor brought in to do an investigation.
Oh, yeah.
Someone who has subpoena powers, and they can bring this to and try people for their failure in their duties. As well as any subsequent lying that goes on. I mean, what you could see what could happen here, where the sense that there was nobody on the roof that day because it was too hot. They didn't want to go up there. Instead of telling like the two most junior cops, the guys right out of the police academy, go stand on that roof, guys. They didn't do that because it was too hot and people were complaining. Nothing had happened before. The other thing too is like this idea of why didn't they just delay? Donald Trump is well known for his rallies not starting on time. Any of these political events don't start on time, particularly when you're dealing with a president or a former president of the United States. None of them begin on time. So why not just let it delay until you found this person, this suspicious character? And so maybe what happened was it had been done before, and then the campaign got very upset with the Secret Service, and the Secret Service didn't want to get in a confrontation about it again. I mean, there's all these different like human factors that could explain it. But you're not going to get into it, and you're not going to get through any of the obvious obfuscation. Why would you trust the Secret Service or the FBI at this point to be involved in any principal or direct capacity in this investigation whatsoever, including voluntarily turning over information? They've been exposed as lying already.
All right, I mean, not any voluntary there. And Tony, I wonder if you can, because you've mentioned that you've helped orchestrate some of these before.
Oh yeah.
When she says that the standing rules of engagement are that you don't have to have permission to fire, even though you can see them with communications gears on there, so they must be talking to people. What does that look like? I mean, what is the thought process that goes in there to cover that? What is that rules of engagement?
Well, a couple things just to, and take us one step back to answer part of Matt's question. Donald Trump said in his recent interview with Jesse Waters, I think it was last night or the night before, that he would have gladly delayed. Trump, it's like, yeah, no, 15, 20 minutes, no big deal. So it wasn't the Trump campaign. And again, I was at the Chesapeake, Virginia rally, I guess it was 3 weeks ago this past Friday, and it was very professional. Trump was a little bit late because we were back, taking pictures with him and everything. So he was delayed. And oh, by the way, at that event, they actually had a helicopter overhead. They had very clear lines of entry and exit. They were channelizing and maintaining track of people. So, and then going into the question you asked me, and I'll answer that next. During the times I've been on these things, and again, I was on the detail for Terry McAuliffe, Governor McAuliffe, on behalf of my friend and boss, Sheriff Dave Decatur. Sheriff Decatur's in Stafford County. He had me as an armed member. And the rules of engagement are very simple. If you see a threat, you terminate it. That's it. That's the guidance that you would have in most cases. You are prepared to protect the principal. That is to say, you need to protect him physically. We all had body armor on. We were, going to, dare I say, I was willing to take a bullet for a Democrat, just saying, bipartisan and everything. And the idea was to protect him. And then at the same time you're protecting the principal, you're then engaging on the target. You're actually doing things to suppress fire, especially in this case. Again, we've all three of us been under fire here. So the first thing you do when you're being shot at, you try your best to return fire. Or in this case, and this was made very clear by Cheatle, her assets, her agents have the authority to fight once a threat is identified, which then tells me that at any point in time, theoretically, and this is where we need to talk to the individuals, find out if there were any subsequent guidance that we don't know about that somehow interfered with this basic rule of engagement. You see a threat, you take it out. And that's where we're kind of still scratching our heads, because nobody really knows what, if anything, was said to the people on the ground.
Right. And that's one, we're going to get to that in just a second here. Next thing I want to get to me, this is one of the Matt, to your point, you've mentioned earlier about it makes it look like you're trying to cover something up. To me, this is one of the big neon signs that you're trying to cover something up. Watch this exchange with Representative McLean and Cheatle here.
Did they share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for
how
their investigation.
Many were there?
And their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question.
Come on, man. I mean, this is to me, this is a problem. And I'm going to get to this later in this segment here, why that's a problem to me. But if you're not even telling me how many rounds the guy fired, that makes it sound like you don't want me to know how many rounds he fired. Well, otherwise, why would you not tell? That's an easy one.
Right. I would say, I guess the argument that it's not an inside job from the director of the Secret Service down is because they don't have their act together. They can't even come up with a cover story or they didn't prepare this part of their their ploy. But exactly, Danny, this idea that you can't even tell us, and they're not doing a closed session, are they? There's no closed hearing.
No,
as part of this.
I don't think so.
So that should have been available as well. Hey, Congresswoman, I'd love to tell you that. I know that, but as we discussed, I can't say that in the open. We have to go behind closed doors, which I'm glad to do. Even that wasn't being offered. It was just this refusal through some type of twisted logic as to why she could get it from the FBI, but couldn't. I mean, the whole thing makes no sense. And of course, for any American listening, you start hearing about how many bullets are there and missing bullets and how many shell cases.
Second shooter theory now.
Yeah. Well, doesn't this sound familiar? You know, doesn't this sound a bit like not just JFK, but also RFK as well? Yeah, I mean, it just we're all struggling to really grasp
So,
that we're talking
as a matter of
about
fact,
this.
let's go right to that, Tony, because that's exactly what the next question is. Is there a second?
At this time, we do not have that there were any other people engaged.
So you believe he's acting alone?
I do.
Okay. Have you been made aware of multiple eyewitness reporting that there was a second shooter on a water tower?
I do not have any information related to any second shooter.
Okay, but others do. And Gary, if you can throw that CNN full screen up there that I was going to use it a little bit later, it's a good spot for it right here. There are people who have said, forensic evidence said that there are evidence that consistent with a weapon A. The next 5 were consistent with a weapon B, and the final acoustic impulse was issued by weapon C. So it appears that the first 3 shots, and I'm going to show you some real detail on this subsequent to after we get through with these sound clips here. But you can hear some significant differences between the first 3 shots, the next 5 shots, and then what was reported to be the kill shot that came later. So for her to say that, and then to not tell us how many casings were found, because that could have answered the question right there. If all those 8 casings were found on top of the roof, then you can say, okay, then that lines up with what we've been told. But now then you're not telling us that. You're not addressing this question that's been asked here. Again, it looks like you're covering something up, or else you just don't know.
And just before, Tony, because maybe you all know this, because I don't know this, has there been anything put out about how many rounds were fired by the Secret Service and also supposedly by a local police officer? Because supposedly a local police officer also fired, but I've not seen anything determinative saying this many rounds were fired by those individuals.
I think she said that they only fired 1 shot. That's what I think she said. I believe she said that. I'd have to.
Yeah, and that is the acoustic signature of the one, because there was a single kill shot that got him, and that by all accounts is the Southern sniper team that they had the line of sight on him and took him out. But it just gets to it just gets deeper and deeper here, that you're not being honest with this. And the question is, why do you come to an open hearing if you're not going to tell them anything? So I mean, Matt, you talked about some of that. What's the point of that?
It's you're doing your duty. You're going out there. You're taking a bullet, if you will, for your organization. You're taking a bullet for the folks who appointed you. There's accusations both online, and I forget which member of Congress. Oh, it was Virginia Fox from here in North Carolina, who she shouldn't be in Congress, but anyway, Virginia Fox, who pushed the director as to how she got her job. And isn't it true? Aren't you friends with Jill Biden and what's his name, Jonathan Bernals or whatever his name is, their close advisor? Insinuating that this is not a job that she earned, but one that she was put into because of friendships and relationships. So I think there is some of that as well. You go there and you take it for the team, you take it for yourself, you take it for those who appointed you. It is her duty. I mean, she was there under subpoena. Let's not forget that. So I don't know if that was just a formality, or if the House committee said, we want you to come here, and they initially said no, and then they said, okay, here's a subpoena. So, but to come in and to do this performance, who should be fired is everyone who helped her with this. I mean, I mean, in the sense of that, like her staff, but maybe that's the case here, that the whole thing is so corrupted, it's so incompetent. And that's what we're seeing put on display, is just, of course, if they can't even come into a committee knowing full well the questions that are going to be asked of them, how can you ever expect them to protect the former president of the United States when there's all types of degrees of threats of violence, all types of political rhetoric, just the pace of the campaign is going to exhaust the Secret Service, all those things. How can they can't, if the director can't even answer simple questions that every one of us knew was going to be asked, and we're waiting to hear? Because that's the other part of this, is not only the damage done between the relationship between the Secret Service and both parties in Congress, but to the American people who had to sit through this and now certainly don't trust the director of the Secret Service.
Okay, well, and now here's another. Gary, I'm going to ask you to skip the next one that we were going to do about who's going to be held accountable, because I want to go to the one about the recordings, because this one is one of the other ones, other than the number of shell casings, which just really sounds very suspicious to me. When we got together right after this happened, one of the things we said, we are really eager to find out what was said when. So we want to hear the recordings that was going on between the headquarters, the guys on the roof, or whatever was happening there. We want to know what was going on. When asked about this, though, here's what Cheatle said.
Depending on the detail, radio communications are recorded.
Does the Secret Service have recorded communications from the July 13th event?
We do not have radio communications from that day.
But you have text messages?
We do have emails and text messages.
Emails, okay, great.
So, Tony, let me ask you. I'm just asking here because I don't have inside knowledge, but it seems like you would always have a recorded evidence, and not just sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't, but on something that potentially this important. Why would you not have them always recorded?
Oh, there's no reason with today's technology. Back in the old days, there was an argument to be made regarding storage. I know back when I started doing cyber stuff back in the late 90s, 1 megabyte, 1 gigabyte, that was a lot. Now you can do terabytes of recording and have it retrievable. So there is absolutely no technical reason to not do that. And yeah, it is alerting regarding the fact that they don't do that as a routine kind of capture, to, if nothing else, just for training. One of the things we do, Matt, I think you probably do this as a Marine. I know we do it in the Army. We do the hot wash after an exercise, right, Danny?
Oh, yeah.
And you sit down and you do good and bad. This is what we did well. This is what we need to improve on. You'd always want to have some sort of a reference to go back and say, gee, Agent Dunkish, you should have, turned at walk and don't walk and gone left instead of right, based on the fact you left this sector, something like that. And the fact that they don't have that is very alerting, because again, there's no technical reason with the cheapness, the inexpensive amount of storage available to everyone.
And look, man, that would have answered so many questions, so many things we want to know of who knew what, when, what were they saying, who took action, who didn't. Because here's one of the other things, and I don't think we have a sound bite for this one, but on the timeline, the original, when the two teams, the northern and the southern one on the two barns behind Trump, one was oriented to the north, one on the south was oriented to the south, until about 2.5 minutes before the shot was fired. The southern team reoriented also to the north, and they're the ones that eventually took that shot out. So the question is, why? Someone communicated with them, told them to do that. If that was recorded, we would have all that information and we would find out, what they knew when. But now that we don't have it, at least they claim they don't have it, we don't have any answers to that.
Well, Danny, one of the things to add to that question, I don't mean to jump in, Matt, but I want to, because this is something we talked about last time, was I want to know where they were looking other than the shooter. Remember, we talked about this our last session. It's like, where were they looking? Because they were all really certain that this was the only guy. It's like, really? I'd want to know if they were covering other sectors and who was actually doing the overwatch of the people responding, because people responding to that initial shooter could be targets for another shooter. And you want to cover those guys to protect them. So I'd want to know, did you actually have your other teams protecting the initial team going in to stop this guy? Because there could have been, and we don't know, because obviously we don't know if there was a second shooter or something else was going on. And again, any artifact such as a recording or other real-time capture of events would be very helpful in actually explaining that to us and the American people.
And let me tell you one other thing that it would have been really, really helpful on, and recording or no, one of the crucial questions that I still have. And Gary, I'm going to skip the next one that we had there about the size of the agents. I think we've talked a lot about that at other times as well. But this to me is the third most important thing that was covered today, or not covered, not answered anyway. And that is someone is suspicious or they're a threat. So I want to show you two clips here. Where first of all, Cheatle is explaining how they define the two, and then how they applied it on that day. Watch this one first.
For the Secret Service, for an individual to be determined to be a threat, that individual would have to be seen with a weapon or capable of doing some sort of harm to our protectees.
I mean, Director, an individual walking into a rally with a rangefinder, scoping out an unprotected rooftop, and he reportedly flew a drone over hours before. It sounds like a lot more than suspicious, especially at a presidential rally.
Okay, so before I get to the second one, Tony, because you mentioned something about this earlier, there should have been enough already seen to make somebody go from suspicious to send a team out to find this guy, and don't just be satisfied with looking around or have him, quote, disappear back into the crowd.
Yeah, it goes back to our conversation, alerting behavior. We all, this is true of counterterrorism operations, intelligence operations, law enforcement operations. You always look for alerting behavior, some little thing that indicates something is not right. And the way you deal with that is, in this case in particular, you confront it. And the fact that at this point, it appears that this kid literally did a thorough and effective reconnaissance of the site using technology, which is supposed to be banned or at least monitored, that is the drone. You had alerting behavior regarding him literally walking around, being obvious about looking at the grandstand and looking at places he was going to get, capped off with him crawling on a freaking roof, for God's sake, and people saying, hey, he's up there. So these things are inexcusable and unexplainable. That's what I don't get. And even if you give the premise that, oh, we didn't have thorough communications, I don't buy it, because there was sufficient evidence that there was somebody prowling on the grounds with a number of behaviors and items which are suspicious, to have not checked it out and delayed President Trump's arrival or moving to stage. That right there is the key.
At the very minimum, right? And Matt, here's the next thing on the next clip I'm going to show here. This is and I'm going to be a little bit charitable and say it appears to be nothing short of either she's badly misinformed or it's a lie, because she's going to say that they didn't transition from a suspicious to a threat until right before the shots. Watch this.
Yeah.
When did he transform from suspicion to threat? Because they're treated very differently. People can be suspicious, but they're not a threat until a certain point in time. So when did that happen?
I believe that it was seconds before the gunfire started.
Seconds.
Okay, we showed the last time we were on here, when we had barely hours after the thing was over, we showed multiple people on the ground, minutes, plural, that were pointing up. We saw a policeman running on the ground. We know the cop climbed up on the roof to try to see him seconds before the shot. We also know that the Southern team, somebody told them to reposition 2 minutes plus before the shots are fired. So somebody knew something before that happened. So when she tells us now under oath that she only knew seconds before that there was actually a threat there, do you find that credible?
Well, if you say seconds in the sense that she only had 195 seconds, yeah, I mean, you can divide it, right? I mean, like, if you want to do, right? I mean, like, so probably that sounds like an answer her late lawyer may have given her, you know, as well for a PR strategist. But no, I mean, the thing about that is we watched this last week. You and Gary did such a great job putting that string of videos together that showed the timeline, how there were roughly 2 minutes, and you could see with the sniper's behavior, the counter sniper behavior, that they were watching this guy. And then, as we now know, the Southern team oriented and they were the ones who fired upon him. But then you also had those two police officers trying to get up on the roof. So you can make the argument, again, we'll be charitable here. Let's say the snipers held off because they knew these two police officers were going on the roof and they would have been in the line of fire. Say that was the answer. How come we haven't heard that answer? We've heard no answers. But mainly the thing that bothers me, and it's been bothering me so much since Tony spoke about this last week, this point, why didn't they get him off the stage? Once he became a threat, why wasn't he removed from the stage? Once he transitioned from suspicious guy to threat guy, how come the president wasn't removed? And if you have that type of rule of engagement, wherein your snipers are allowed to fire, your officers, your agents are allowed to fire on anything they perceive as a threat, why doesn't the protective detail also fall underneath those same rules of engagement? As soon as there's a threat, we get the president, the former president, out of here. So, I mean, the more these people talk, the more that they provide these non-answers, the deeper the questions get about what actually happened here and what are they trying to cover up. Because, I mean, again, like they should have these answers. How come there's not a timeline, where these people have already been questioned? And set up then in some type of investigation that, again, doesn't have to be released to the public at this point. At some point it needs to be, but could have been provided to the House Committee on Oversight in a draft form.
Right. Yeah, you can say, look, and in fact, she did many times say, hey, we're going to have a 60-day check on this and we'll come back with answers then. No, you don't wait 60 days for something like this, but you can say, right, there's an interim. I mean, because 9 days is an eternity to get basic answers.
Yeah, I mean, Tony brought this up before about investigations. We've all done them. If you're in the military, if you're an officer in the military, you do a lot of investigations.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking you're not going to. Anyone who's looking to join the military, become an officer, let me tell you ahead of time, you're not going to like it. But I mean, what you have here,
isn't that preach, brother, preach?
In 90 days, not to have that information of like, this is what happened. This is what our sniper team communicated to the TOC or whatever you'll call it in the Secret Service, law enforcement, Tactical Operations Center. These were what was said. These are the decisions that were made. This was communicated. Why isn't that assembled? And and so again, these questions of the other things that trouble you too when you look at this is if this is what they were consumed by with one gunman, right? What if there were multiple gunmen?
Exactly.
In a worst case, we can, and the three of us, I'm sure everyone listening can think of all types of Hollywood type scenarios that, but say if there was an Islamic State or Al Qaeda type attack on the former president, it would have been a multiple attack using multiple weapons coming from different angles, distraction, etc. Even if it was just 2 or 3 gunmen, that's how they would have done it. And so if you can imagine how overwhelmed they were by one kid crawling on again, the roof was high. It was 95 degrees there that day or whatever it was. Right as soon as he was on the roof, people should have been like, this person is up to no good, right. Let alone the fact that he looked weird and they couldn't find him and everything else. So, I mean, the unraveling into this, a crisis that it should be is being well presented to us.
Yeah, it is. And I want to kind of transition into a different part here because all of the things that we've talked about up to this point are deepening a sense of you're either lying to me or you're covering something up. But this, I saw one of our comments here, or one of our viewers here, that it just doesn't smell right. And that's what we were saying right away. There's just a number of things that just don't smell right here. And one of the, I guess, key things that is starting to emerge to me is something else didn't smell right. And yesterday I went and did a little experiment of my own, which I'll show you in just a second here, that just deepened my own belief that something is not right here. And I want to show you a few things that I've also found online, some new information that I came across. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but a number of people are doing what really our Secret Service people ought to be doing, and showing us that maybe there was a second shooter. Now, I'll just tell you right up front, I'm relying on information that we have found out there, and I always cross-check everything else to see what's going on, to see if it's a reliable source, etc. And so this is an ongoing thing, but there is a theory that's being formed, and there is enough credible information out there that this is where an investigation needs to go to find out. First of all, I want to look at an excellent simulation that was done by a private individual. I think is a private company did this on their own, and they show you using the starting point of where the shooter's body was found, what happens with some of these shots here. So first of all, there was 8 shots that were allegedly fired by Crooks, the Matthew Crooks. And it's interesting in how they go. And you're going to see this in a couple of different videos coming up here in a few minutes, that there are 2 really distinct groupings of shots. There is the first 3 shots, and I'm going to show you the C-SPAN video of what was shown to the America Live, and you'll hear a shot and then an echo. It goes pew, because of just the acoustics of the round. So the first 3 shots, but they're methodical. There's 1, 2, 3, and then a 3-second pause, and then this scatter shot of 5 shots, just bam, 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 and then a sixth one that follows in after that. Then you'll see there's 9 seconds that pass, and then you hear the kill shot that comes in. So I want to talk about all those things as they come out. But first of all, watch this interesting simulation of the video, because you see some where some of the people were hurt as a result. Watch this.
This is the area we're going to focus in on. Here you can see the 3 victims that were injured by gunfire and where they were standing in the bleachers. We're going to turn around and demonstrate exactly where these bullets came from. This model represents Thomas Crooks. His position can be seen here in this image, which illustrates exactly where he was. Turning around, we can see the path of all the bullets that were fired from this location. I placed a 10-foot red disc downrange to represent what an average shooter could hit easily. Now let's take a look at this first shot fired. Coming from our key location, bullet 1 grazes President Trump's ear. This is the same bullet that hits a spectator in the stands. We know this through video evidence. As President Trump is talking, the first shot rings out just after he says, "Take a look at what happened."
Something that said, "Take a look at what happened."
We can see the vapor trail of a bullet strike, which is the same bullet that struck President Trump's ear a split second earlier, and this video is this location here.
Take a look at what happened.
With all that gunfire, it's easy to understand how these spectators were injured, even though they were not the target, including the sole spectator who lost his life that day.
So now, Tony, I'm gonna ask you to speak on this aspect in a second after I show the next video here, because it's important. But the first shot, the very first shot, should have been the kill shot. Gary, if you can roll that other video actually underneath this, because you see on this simulation, this is where Trump's head was, and then right before it happened, that's when many people have heard this whole thing that his turn of the head may have saved his life, and you see it graphically right there. That had he not made that last turn, that's where the bullet would have entered, and this we'd be having a very different conversation today. That's actually what happened. So that implies somebody who is really good at what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And the specific thing I'm going to want you to talk about is how a trained sniper actually engages the target with the breathing, with the finger squeeze, and all that kind of stuff, and how important that is to being to hitting a shot on target. I want to show that second. But first of all, again, here was what America saw live on July 13th.
Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
So on that last bit there, and that what seems like an eternity, it's 9-10 seconds, somewhere around there, and then you hear the kill shot, then that lady screams. So there's a couple things I want to talk about there. But first of all, Tony, I'd like you to talk about the means of a trained sniper, how they shoot, and what is required to get a clean shot from that distance.
Well, this guy wasn't a trained sniper, and I'll be honest, and I hope the audience doesn't get upset. Any one of the three of us could have taken that shot and made it hit. Now, this is this is actually an Army round. This is the current issue. This is a steel tip 5.56. The caliber that he used, I'm not sure if he had 5.56 or the civilian, what, 223. But it's the same bullet. With the 5.56 has more powder. It's more powerful. And Danny, to your point, the acoustics are going to tell the entire story. Maybe that's why she's not talking about the number of casings, just saying, because for the audience to understand, the bullet comes off the casing. The casing is what's left. I got to be clear on this, because I don't want anybody to think that, oh, this whole thing's a bullet. It's not. This is the casing, and this is the bullet right up front. So what we're going to come to find, and I think other folks have already done the analysis, is that you hear a double click, click, click. The first click, the first sound is the bullet supersonic going past the microphone. So when it goes through past Trump's microphone, you hear the sonic boom, and then you hear the report, the click. So it's click, click. It's click, click. So those bullets, every time you have that, you're hearing that. You don't necessarily understand that's what you're hearing, but you're hearing it literally 2 clicks per shot. They're very microseconds apart though, because of the travel. Now, I'm not a Marine, so I don't memorize. And I don't know if I'm not trying to be glib here, but I know the Marines that memorize numbers more than we do. We just shoot things; they memorize things. So they memorized it. But I'm telling you, this thing is traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Mhm.
So within the first 3 shots, and Danny, you're correct. The first shot was supposed to be the kill shot, and that's pretty good trigger discipline. Pow, pow, pow. You're acquiring the target. You're maintaining pretty good accuracy, because anytime you fire, even with a 5.56, and again, this is the basic weapon. Some form of this is what he was using. You're going to have, even though it's a light recoil to other weapons, you still have recoil, and you have to reacquire the target. So the first one is supposed to be the kill shot. The next 2 were a little bit off because he's now either pulling a little bit. He's not an expert marksman. I mean, he's not a sniper, because snipers, by the way, Danny, and you know this, they use bolt action rifles. So the bolt action comes back because the snipers believe the bolt action gives them more precision, especially at longer ranges. So this was not a long range shot. This is something that, again, we could have taken. We could have probably made that shot pretty accurately, even with iron sights. And now apparently the kid has a scope, which, why didn't they just talk about the scope a little bit too? What kind of scope did he have? These are basic things that I think the public has the right to know. But anyway, to your point, to continue it and finish it, the 3 shots were very effectively aimed. The first one was supposed to be the kill shot. And then after the first 3, that's when the sound of the ballistics changes. Apparently, there's a change in the time between the sonic boom and the report. That is to say that there's a longer period, micro period, between the other shots, the subsequent shots after the first 3. That's where there's the theory. Again, I'm not saying it's true or false. I'm just saying there's a theory that when those bullets came whizzing by, the first 3 reports do not match the ballistic signature of the other ones that came after. So that's where there's a mystery.
As a matter of fact, I do have a piece on that. Let me roll that tape, Gary.
Here's 1, 2, and 3 to start. Okay, listen to that again. And one more time. Okay, now let's listen to the next string. Ooh. Yeah. Hear that?
So yeah, you see very clearly they were different.
It is what it is.
You can even see on the C-SPAN version I showed you at the first. There's a difference between the first 3 and the second 5. And actually, the second 5 or 6, I think, is what it actually turned out to be. So something is amiss there. And then, like I said, there's still 9 seconds. And before I really show you what I think is the significance of these, Matt, I wonder if you can talk about the problem that seems to me to be if the Southern counter sniper team 2 minutes before got some kind of information and reoriented away from the South, which is the natural place they should have been watching if they didn't know where a threat may come from. And then why did it still take 9 seconds after the end of the second round of fire? So I think like 12 or 14 seconds from the time it started before they took the kill shot. What would have taken that long?
They may not have had a sight on them. They might not have been able to fire on them in a sense that they didn't have a clean shot on them. And so at that point, 9 seconds after he finished firing, he may have begun to move, get up, right, get himself out from behind concealment, and then get shot in the head. But we don't know. We don't know, and there's been no detailing, as we've been saying, about what occurred here. But so we have to assume, we have to make the assumption that this is why there was that 9-second delay, because that certainly, if they were, if they had a clear shot on him, they could see him well, they would have fired at some point during those first rounds or immediately after those first rounds being fired. Then, because at that point, there's no excuse for saying that We don't know if he uses a weapon or not. Again, the whole idea of someone being up low crawling on that hot roof towards the former president of the United States, when you're on the lookout for someone suspicious, it belies all that anyway. So it just, I mean, the more we talk about this, guys, the more it's like, this is, you couldn't make a better scenario for people to be confused, to have honest questions. I mean, this is just not the stuff of people just making stuff up because they want to. This is like, these are legitimate questions that today, so amazingly, why wasn't the information you shown, Danny? I'm sure the Secret Service has done this already. The FBI done the same type of ballistics, acoustics, flight mapping of the bullets that you just showed us. Why wasn't that presented to the members of Congress and the American public today? I mean, that kind of thing.
And let me just also, Gary, I just realized I forgot to send you these 3 of the screenshots I was going to send, because I sent the one, if you could pull that back up, this CNN talking about that they had a forensics expert that said that they believe, if listen to the details of it, that there could be 3 separate weapons. So that gives the implication that there was a second shooter that was involved there. But then when people start talking about this, and you had some senators were saying, hey, we've heard that there was at least 10 different eyewitnesses from what I've read that said they saw a shooter on a water tower that was not far away, and nearly in the same line of sight is where the shooter was from. And I have seen a bunch on CBS especially, but also Rolling Stone and several others did immediately say, oh, it has been totally debunked. It is definitely not true. All these conspiracy theories. And I'm like, hang on. You definitely hear something different with the shot. So there's something that's an anomalous right away. But now then you're immediately saying with no investigation that it was definitely debunked. That gets my alarm up when people want to make conclusive statements without having done any investigation. So that just keeps me thinking and going down a road here. Now, I want to share something with you here, and I don't know if you guys are going to agree with it. Tony, you may not, at least part of it, just because of something you said a second ago.
It's your show, so it is what it is.
Well, no, but I'm cool with the dialogue.
I want to get invited back on, so I agree with you, Danny.
I appreciate that. So this is a theory, and it's an evolving theory. Again, what all I'm doing is taking information from my personal experience, and then also from what I'm reading and seeing is being reported. But some things are starting to line up, which caused me some concern. Now, first of all, Tony, you just said, any of us could have taken that shot from that range.
Yeah, I sincerely believe that. Yes,
but here's where I don't agree with that, or I think that it's not at all a given. Because if you and I we're just going to take a shot, that's one thing. But this kid was under the most incredible pressure that anybody could be under. He doesn't have combat experience like we do. He wasn't trained. He knows he was just spotted because this cop jumped up on the side of the roof there. So now that, according to what we're told, the within seconds of that cop dropping off and him pointing his weapon in there, he turned back around, acquired the target, and I had the first shot for a kill shot when he wasn't even good enough to make his high school team. So that kind of set me to thinking. And I was remembering, and I'll bring this up because it involves both of you two. In 2012, I was under some pressure one day. I particularly remember back from Afghanistan, you guys had helped me to become this whistleblower where I was going to tell the truth about what was going on in Afghanistan. And the day that I went public with the generals, I had assembled all the information. You guys had gotten to me prepared. We had already talked to the New York Times. None of it had been publicized yet. And I had to walk from one end of the Pentagon to the other with a classified briefing that I had given to Congress that I was now going to give to a 3-star general that I knew, who he thought I was coming over for a nice visit. And I remember my heart was in my throat the whole time, thinking, if anyone catches me before I get there with this classified information, they're going to ask questions and it could mess everything up, etc. So I was so stressed and pressure. And that's somebody who's been in combat before. This kid was left a quiet life, etc. So for him to be able to get a perfect shot off on the first one just seems extremely unlikely to me. So to prove that to myself, or to see what I could do, I tried to recreate some of it. So I went to a shooting range yesterday. Watch this tape. I don't want to just tell you what I think. I want you to physically see what I'm talking about. And that is primarily the idea that Thomas Crooks, a 20-year-old kid that had very little self-confidence, that kept to himself, that was a quiet kid, never even, the only time, I don't know if you saw this, the only thing he ever got in trouble for in high school was chewing gum. Went to detention for chewing gum and earlier in his career or something. And that's it. To suddenly go to a guy who's trying to assassinate the president of the United States, there's just something about this that is not passing the smell test. And so I'm going to go out and show you why I think that the idea that this kid took the first 3 shots, that the very first shot of which grazed President Trump's ear, and then the second 2 were apparently very close by, and they were all good shots. And then all of a sudden there's another set separately, starting 3 seconds later, that were just random and radical, just all over the place. Terrible discipline. Somebody who's actually trying to shoot somebody who knows what they're doing would never do it that way. So something is just not adding up to me, and I'm going to go kind of show you what I'm talking about. Really noisy in here. Lots of bullets flying around here. I'm going to show you what's down right here in just a second. But I'm going to do the weapon here just like what we've told that the shooter did. That the cop came up to his side. He looked over away like that with his weapon. I can't point it any way down the range, but he went like this and then went back, and within seconds he fired off 1, 2, 3 shots. So that's what we're going to do right now. So get my weapon loaded. This is an AR-15, just very similar to the one I used in combat. So move it to safe, off safe to fire. So he looked over here, he said this, then the guy gets down, and he 1, 2. All right, let's see how I did. Okay, so you see, I fired 3 shots. I got 2 of them close to the head, not quite on it. I was aiming for center mass on the head, and that's as good as I could get, folks. That is, where's it at here? That's from 25 meters, 2.5, not 147. And that's with somebody who's got some experience, and that is that close. Now you can say I'm not an experienced shooter, but I guarantee you, a kid from 147 meters with 20 years old, never been in a stressful situation, life or death, he ain't gonna get that shot, folks. It ain't gonna happen. Okay, now I'm gonna shoot the 5 shots in that rapid succession like you heard. You get the first 3, bam, bam, bam. And the second 5, bam, 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 bam. 5, 6, 5 or 6. We're gonna shoot 6. It was bum, 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 bum. I'm going to show you what that looks like now, and then we're going to see. I got a new target down there, so we'll take a look at it in just a second. Let's see how it did. Okay, well, it turns out this time I actually I came kind of close here this time, but you see, I actually got one kind of out where the ear would be, but again, bear in mind, folks, that was 25 yards, and that was somebody who knows what they're doing. And you can understand that these here from a distance are going to be feet off the target here. That's just from 25 meters. That just shows you how hard this is. So, okay, so Tony, let me go to you first and specifically ask this question. Why would, number one, I'd see it for the kid to have gone from, oh gosh, I've been caught, and then the first shot be on target just seems pretty unlikely to me. But then the second part, which has to also go together, why would he take those 3 methodical shots, wait 3 seconds, and then just start spraying them after Trump was already gone?
So it's a great point, and I agree with your premise that there's something else afoot. Now, we don't know, and take this as, you know, it is, you weren't in the prone position, so you weren't supported. You were unsupported. So you and I both know that unsupported, you're not going to shoot as accurately. So that's one thing that he had that you didn't. Secondly, he had a scope. So I, not that I have a lot of guns around my house, but I have a lot of guns around my house. So I pulled out my real gun. This is the one I used, just say it. And you can see it has a scope. This is a red dot. This is about 100 meters. I could hit things.
And that's what he had, right? He had a red dot. He didn't have an actual scope.
We don't know. We
Well,
don't exactly know, but this is a basic red dot scope. It goes right on top. This is I fired this accurately out to about 100 meters. I have about 3 acres here, so not that I have overlapping and continuous fields of fires, but yeah, I kind of do. Anyway,
I need to come over and visit, man.
Don't show up uninvited. Just saying. So anyway, but my point being is we don't know what scope he had either. But to your point, even one of us with the proper technology in a prone position, unless you take a deep breath, right? We're taught.
Right. That
release some, and then you do it. And then so when you have the stress of people pointing and yelling at you, that's a stressor, right? And then you have police officers crawling up, trying to get up your ass. That's a stressor. Yeah, someone had to have immensely steady nerves and take more than a deep breath to be able to kind of center and hit the target with precision. It's not as easy as I think one would make it. As much as I say I think we can make the shot, I'm saying we could make it in the best conditions where we're not, and we've been under fire, and I've shot at people. I may have shot at people, just saying. It was legit shots. If I shot people, it was legitimate, just saying. Don't want to get anybody upset with me. But within the context of even the legit shoots I've made, they're very difficult to make, and you're under stress. You go black in a situation like that. You go into the black, so you have to retain and rely on muscle memory, right, guys? Muscle memory. So
absolutely.
you have to get so well trained that within the context of all these stressors happening, you can still come up, take the deep breath, and pull. That's not easy. So again, did the kid take the first 3 shots, or did someone else take those shots? And were the last shots him spraying? Because those last shots,
that's exactly what my theory is. And Matt, I want you to talk on this.
Those last shots were spraying. He was not, those were not precision shots.
And plus Trump had already dropped by that time. Like he had dropped 3 full seconds. So I don't even know what those other 5 shots would have been shooting at. And Matt, I wonder if you have any thoughts on that part.
Well, it'd be great if they'd had a drone there, right? I mean, you'd have so many of these questions answered if there was a drone.
Right.
I mean, one of the things might have been how long between the cops trying to get on the roof and one cop falling off and everything else, and the shot was fired. That we don't have that timeline. Was it 2 seconds? Was it 20 seconds? Did it allow him to get back into a better position? Did the weapon have a bipod on it? I mean, like, did it have? I mean, all these things that we just don't know the answer to.
Right.
But your points are exactly right about how. In a situation like this, how nervous you're going to be, the adrenaline, but that is always improved upon through training and experience. And I give you an example that I think maybe a lot of people watching can relate to is, remember the first time you went to the liquor store with your fake ID, right? And how nervous you were.
Oh, I remember that.
Right. And then after, using it several times, you were an old pro going in there, calm, cool, collected, right? I mean, that's what experience does. That's what training does. And so this opens up a whole other pathway, is like, how did this occur? If there is something deeper, how well prepared was he? And, the evidence for something like that occurring is the fact that you have had more than 2 decades now of the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies doing exactly this type of thing and trapping young Muslim men, right? Creating these circumstances. I mean, it's been a history for 20 years of dozens upon dozens of just prosecutions of young Muslim men who were entrapped, set up, brought into conspiracies that the FBI themselves were creating. So they have the experience in being able to do this, to carry this out, because they have been carrying it out.
No doubt.
Yeah, that you could then transition it to this. And again, I believe this was the guy. This was it. Story is as simple as it looks. However, then you start hearing people talk about it. You start showing all this evidence. You see the performance today of the Secret Service director, and things just don't add up. But this idea of like being able to hit something, it's not like the movies, folks. I remember, in Anbar province in Iraq in 06-07, I can't remember. I was with both 7th Marines and then 2nd Marines. At one point, the regimental staff, out of the 3 shop, out of the operations staff or the logistics shop, came up with how many bullets have we fired as a regiment And we are a reinforced regiment. So we had like 5 battalions in that regiment. How many bullets did we fire for every time we actually hit somebody? And it was a pretty embarrassing figure. But that was, anyone who's been in combat knows that's the reality of it. That's the reality of it.
100%.
There's so much pressure. There's so much stress. There's so much adrenaline that you think it's going to be like the movies, or it's just like you're going to the range. You're absolutely completely wrong about that.
Yeah. And so, listen, I know we've gone a little bit long here, but before I let you both go, I wonder if you can just kind of theorize as best that you can, setting aside all these issues we've talked about here. But one of the things that still is a complete puzzlement to me that I haven't even been able to come up with anything rational. And I don't know, Matt, maybe you can, is whether he was alone or whether this was part of something else. I just cannot imagine what could have driven this kid to either willingly go along with something or whatever, because he's got none of the markers that normally go with someone who gets radicalized to take this kind of action. In fact, everything in his history that we can uncover says that he would never do something like this, and yet he did.
Right. And the media is not helping. I saw there was one interview they did with somebody who had a political discussion with him 8 years ago. So when he was 12 years old, and that's what they were promoting as evidence that he was anti-Trump. You know, I mean, like, so
No.
for the most part, you've seen some comments coming out of people who appear to did know him, who are saying, look, the people who are saying these things about him don't know him. These weren't his friends in high school. The school has said he was a good kid. Nothing ever really happened. We have no record of this. The family seems shocked. He seemed to have been, he just finished an engineering program at a community college, and he was going into a 4-year engineering program. So he was able to get things done. He was competent. He didn't exhibit the behaviors, I think, that people are looking for. What is odd is the lack of a social media presence. But maybe he just didn't have a social media presence. Maybe we shouldn't maybe that at that point in that generation, his group, they're just not doing it. He was on Twitch, so he was doing some things. So the fact that we know so little about him may mean that there's just not a lot to know, or it could mean something more sinister, that he was a patsy, because again, that history is there. This idea of patsies is something that is very real. Look, it was just a year and a half ago that we got all that evidence, deathbed confession about how the NYPD and the FBI essentially assassinated Malcolm X, right? We're not making things up here. And again, the RFK assassinations, the JFK assassinations, there's a book I was going to recommend to people that will really help you change your mind, because this idea that it can't happen in our generation is something that we hold on to, that these things happen in the past, but our generation is somehow different. We are not part of the current of history or the long continuous line of history. That's why Iraq would be different than Vietnam. That's why Ukraine would be different than Iraq. Those types of things. And we have to realize that there may be something here that we don't want to look at, because it is something that would be very troubling if there was something more to this than this kid just being on the roof by himself.
So what do you think, Tony? What are your thoughts on why he may have done it?
I think Matt is naive. I think Powerpuff Girls, Yo Gabba Gabba, and SpongeBob are very radicalizing if not properly. I am, of course, joking, because I love Yo Gabba Gabba, and maybe I am.
Of course. Who would, right?
But no, Matt's completely right. This whole idea that somehow we're immune from the tendencies of human nature is insane. And yet I think we all want to think are better angels, to quote President Lincoln, are that which informs our actions. And it's just not true. And I think we have to recognize there's still evil. Evil, it does not have a political party. It does not have a political home. It is just evil. And I think that's what we saw on display today, evil. And both political sides came together and said, there's something evil at the core of this. We just don't know what it is. And I'm going to say it. Am I getting in trouble for it? I think the reason we're not seeing the basic answers, like Marjorie Taylor Greene laid out today, she asked Cheatle, did you bring us a timeline? Danny, I think you said, why wasn't there, or Matt, I don't know if you said it. Matt, you said, why didn't she show up with PowerPoint presentations with the basic interrogatories, which is what I would have done if I'm the director. It's like, hey, here's what we know so far. I apologize. I should have done a better job. I'm resigning. But instead of doing that, she basically said, well, we have a timeline, but we're not going to share it. Oh, really? Well, that's helpful. And that's the thing. I think there was a narrative being prepared to go back to Matt's point. I think there was a narrative, and the narrative was, we are mourning the loss of Donald Trump. They were prepared for that narrative. I think they had ramped themselves up behind the scenes. And I think what we see here, everything else has been weaponized against candidates they don't like. I think this was weaponized incompetence. I think this was incompetence by design.
Well, I guess we're going to find out, although it's going to be hard because no information is forthcoming from the people who are supposed to provide it. But I can assure you that we're not going to rest until we get to the bottom of this, and we're going to keep drilling. And I know thousands of other people are also using a lot of their own capabilities and research abilities to find this out. And it's just not going to stay hidden. So whatever did happen, because there is, in my view, there is no chance, zero, that Thomas Crooks acted on his own and did this crazy thing. And now we're embarrassed because the Secret Service wasn't ready. But okay, cool. Moving on. Let's just make it better next time. Something is more to this. It just, there's no way it could be less. But we'll find out. Well, listen, appreciate you guys coming on and give me a little overtime, extra time today. And we're definitely going to have you guys back on as soon as we get the next round of information.
Or non-information as it be, right? Yeah.
Thanks, Danny.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot. And thanks to you guys for coming on too. Always appreciate you. I just wanted to let you go. We got some other great shows coming up this week. We got John Mearsheimer back. We got Doug McGregor coming back on, scheduled to come on tomorrow. Got a number of other folks here. A lot of things are going on around the world. This is not the only thing. History has not stopped, and things are going on in both Asia and in Europe, and we're going to bring it all to you this week. Thanks, and be sure to like and subscribe so that other people can get to experience the same things you do. And we'll see you tomorrow on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.